Today I'm going to talk about mistakes that you can make in home winemaking and how potentially you can fix them. I'm Carlos from Rancho Las Brisas, and we are 8 weeks away from bottling our wine, and we have to decide whether or not we're going to bottle it and whether it's ready to be bottled. And we're going to be looking for some of the common flaws that appear in wine from the potential mistakes that you make. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump in. So this is our Pinot 24, and I just took some samples from our 2 barrels, and I'm going to be looking for and smelling for particular things to decide whether or not it's something I'm going to bottle in 8 weeks and whether I have to make some adjustments to it. So the first thing I'm going to look for is I'm going to evaluate the color of the wine. Now, our Pinot typically comes in a color very similar to this. Sometimes it could be a little bit darker, a little bit richer in color. But what I'm noticing right here, right from the get-go, is that there's no browning in that wine. So the wine that I'm seeing is very, very, red in color, and I'm not seeing any browning that's any of concern to me. Now, if I saw browning, what? Okay, so if I saw browning, that means oxidation. That means that my wine has been exposed to too much air, and the oxygen has come in and started changing the color chemicals in the wine, not something we add, but the natural occurring color components, and changing them just like an apple turns brown. So I'm noticing that we don't have that, so that's great. So the flaw or the mistake that you make in your home wine making is that you expose your wine to too much oxygen, and too much oxygen is bad. And there are things that could happen further down the line after too much oxygen, but that's the first thing I'm looking for. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm looking at the legs. So the legs are, I swirl my wine, and I'm looking for how the wine kind of drips down on the side of the glass. I don't know if you can see that very well in the video here, but what I'm looking for is I want to see some legs. That means there's alcohol concentration in there. We know that there's alcohol concentrated in there, but I'm seeing some nice legs to this. So that means that the wine has the right balance of alcohol and it has some body to it. So that's good. Now I'm going to go on, and what's the mistake you can make in home wine making? You might press too soon. So if you press too soon, you miss on some of those flavor components and body components in the wine way back at pressing, which was about a year ago today. A year ago, maybe 10 months ago. So, I see some good structure there. That's going to be good. It's going to be those are all promising signs. So I'm not worried about those 2 mistakes so far. Now I'm going to give this a smell. And what I'm looking for in the smell is I'm looking for anything that strikes me as unusual or strikes me as different. I'm looking for, in particular, things like any of the sulfur mistakes. So one of the problems that winemakers have is that they're not putting in the right nutrients into feeding the yeast, and the yeast start, instead of just making carbon dioxide, they make hydrogen sulfide. And you pick that up as you're making wine, you pick it up, it's like a rotten egg smell. If you let that rotten egg smell if you let it go and you don't treat it right away, it turns into a rubber smell, which are the metacarpons. And if you don't treat those right away, it turns into diethyl, which is like a rubber band smell. And so that's one of the first things I'm looking for, making sure that I've raised the yeast properly to make the wine. If I have the burnt rubber, if it's there and it's present and it's strong, or the rubber band smell, not fixable. I just dump the wine. It's not fixable. It's not worth putting in the bottle because I won't drink it. I have cases of wine in my wine room that I should have dumped already. And I'm not picking up any of those. I am when I'm taking a good smell. I'm picking up some fruit, some strawberry and cherry fruit in there, but none of those sulfur compounds. Possibly a little bit of hydrogen sulfite. That's the preservative that I add in there. That's okay because that's what's going to keep it from turning brown, and it's going to help it preserve as we begin moving forward. So 8 weeks from bottling, I might add a little bit of that to this. If I add too much hydrogen sulfite to the wine, then there are some remedies for that, and I can't recall exactly what they are, but we typically don't have that problem. But it's flexible. I pick up some cherry plummy kind of smells too. Very good. And what I'm also looking for in terms of a smell and aroma is that barnyard smell. That barnyard smell is like, well, it smells like a barnyard. It smells like manure. It smells like dirty socks. It smells like musky kind of odor. And you know, that problem is usually associated with bacterial contamination. So, you know, if you left your home winemaking vat open and some bad bacteria got in there and they were able to ferment, again, those are non-fixable wine flaws or mistakes. Dump it. I've stored you know, wine that had Brett in it, thinking, oh, it's going to get better. Oh, it's going to get better. No, it never gets better. It gets worse. So just dump it. But again, I'm not picking up any of those barnyard smells, so that's good. So this is getting very close to being ready to bottle. Now I'm going to go ahead and do a little tasting on it. And with the Pinot, I want to get the Pinot, you know, I want to ferment it to completion, meaning I want the yeast to eat as much of the sugar as possible. I want to have 1 or 2% sugar, barely registerable on my palate. Having a tiny bit of sugar, 1% or 2%, gives it a little, helps with the fruit coming through. And if for some reason I didn't hit that and it's way too dry, I could add some sugar back to it, though we've never had to do that. But that's what I'm going to taste for, and I'm going to taste for the fruit. Oh, that's nice. Has some nice structure. I'm getting flavor right at the very beginning of my swallow, which is on the front part of my palate. I'm picking up some fruit in there. Now I'm getting some cherries and some strawberries mixed in there. Very common of the wine that we produce here. The wine is still, I like to call it Sauvignon or wild. The flavors are all over the place, but that's okay because this wine is brand new and we probably won't release it for drinking for another 6 or 9 months, but I'm not tasting any of those flaws that I talked about or any of those mistakes that I talked about. And the fruit's coming through and I'm still tasting the wine. So there's a really long finish on that. And for us here at Las Brisas, getting that long finish, that's a big plus because typically we don't get such a long finish. That's a really long finish. Once again, acids are right there. I feel the tingling on each side of my mouth. There's some tannin in there, so a little bit of astringency. There's not too much oak, so I can let the grapes sit inside of those barrels for 8 more weeks, and we should be good. I wish there was someone else here who could give this a try. Okay, so I pretty much went through the common mistakes that you could have in home winemaking. we don't have any of those present here. And there's nothing really I need to do other than maybe add a tiny bit of sulfite to this to make sure we have some in the bottle, because when we do the bottling it's exposed to a lot of air and the sulfite gobbles up that oxygen, so it won't turn brown. But I think we're going to have another award-winning wine here. Now, if you like our content, please like and subscribe and watch some of our other videos too.